The faces on the cards illustrated by Max Kostin, sometimes written as Maxime, are often those reveling in the evil deeds that can only bring joy to the corrupted. Take, for example, the face through the portal on the card Vantage Point from the set Rosetta. Twisted merriment that seems to deride purity. This face is in stark contrast to the shrouded visages of the hooded figures. But keep those hooded figures in mind because we'll come back to that. Wry, nearing deranged smiles are a recurring theme I've noticed, and the slacked jaws of death, the pure excitement of terror. My name is Ethan Beam, and I play Flesh and Blood, a hero-centric trading card game invented and developed in New Zealand by James White. That's him right there. If you're here on the 2Card-8 Team YouTube channel, no doubt you're familiar with the game, but if not, I'd ask that you still come with me on this journey. Small disclaimer, I am prone to what my brother calls over-exaggeration, although I'd prefer the term hyperbole. So just going forward, know that you are hearing my opinions and beliefs expressed sometimes through hyperbole. Don't worry, I'll make sure to stay as factual as I can, but this is a video about my point of view, so... The beautiful thing about this game, other than the actual perfect gameplay loop, is the original IP and the wonderful art that comes along with it. There are many important artists in this game. Sam Yang, the art director of Flesh and Blood, comes to mind. You'll find a cracked bauble in every draftable set. But when I say important, what do I mean? Well, Oscar Wilde said, "To define is to limit." But if you'll allow me to, let me limit the word important. Talking about those opinions of mine, important means a few things to me. My position is that important means, 1, the artists have worked with LSS regularly, perhaps even from the beginning. Number 2, it means that the artist has a good understanding of the title of the card in relation to the art, in relation to the text in the box. Number 3, it means that their art brings a unique feel to Flesh and Blood. Certainly in games like Lurken, you'll see things that you know. Those characters, they're easy to identify. But what about characters you don't? Does an artist make them immediately recognizable? 4, it means that the artist contributes to the euphoria of class identity. And finally, and most importantly, to me, it means that the art is striking and brings to mind more images than just the one you see in the box. Now, I'll try to relate each of these qualifiers to Max's art in each section, but to me, these are just generally the things that make an important artist in Flesh and Blood's history. And when I say the most important artist in Flesh and Blood, who comes to mind? I'm asking for real, you can tell me in the comments. Side note, while you're there, go ahead and like the video if you could. This is my first time doing this, so I'm just trying to gauge if people actually like this thing. You can also tell me in the comments if you want to see more as well. But back to the video. When I say the most important artist in Flesh and Blood, I think of only one person. Max, sometimes written as Maxime, Kostin. There's no secret that many Flesh and Blood heroes, while extremely unique to their class and personalities, are often illustrated very, let's say, samey. Take all 4 heroes, young and old, in Welcome to Wraith, the first Flesh and Blood set. In Limited, like Sealed and Draft, you'd play with the young heroes. Here is Dorinthia, often referred to as Dory, and here is Dorinthia Ironsong. Here is Bravo, here is Bravo Showstopper. Reinar again, Katsu again. See what I mean? They stay true to their personalities, same poses, perhaps even the same clothes. They often stay in very similar backgrounds. The young foretells perfectly the old. But it doesn't take long until someone comes in and switches up the formula entirely. In fact, an artist whose art could already be seen in the first set, fulfilling that first bullet point of my limitation of important, this artist looks at these character portraits and says, let's do something different. Max has worked on all types of cards, even designing a fabled gem, the rarest rarity of an inset card. But when it comes to the card that never leaves the board, no matter what, a card you must always start with when you begin a game of Flesh and Blood is a hero card. First, there was Welcome to Wraith, then Arcane Rising, the second set in Flesh and Blood history. Same draft formula, but with it, introductions of 4 new classes: Runeblade, Mechanologist, Wizard, and Ranger. Now, I won't lie to you, it's not that I absolutely hate playing Ranger, but the class just does nothing for me. I would say though, as far as high fantasy goes, it's unarguable that Ranger is the most important archetype one could include. And for my money, the hero art on the card Azalea Ace in the Hole has to be at the top of the list of importance. To demonstrate my point, let me just show you the Welcome to Wraith heroes again. Now, the Arcane Rising hero cards, Dash, Kano. Viscerai tells a more interesting story, and again, Azalea. The most unique aspect to Azalea is the comparison to her adult counterpart. Young, matured, cocky, confident, debauchery, execution. There are so many differences in these two depictions, it's actually incredible. Let's start with the face, the focal point of the paintings. She goes from looking at the viewer, subtly trying to ask something along the lines of, "Aren't you impressed?" to looking out of frame. This signifies to me that she goes from caring about her perception as a hotshot to aiming the course of her next arrow. She goes from caring about what the viewer thinks of her to scanning the area for trouble. Like I said, she goes from cocky to confident. There is a grace in the way she holds herself in her adult version. She is on edge, ready, whereas the young Azalea seems to be unaware of the pure and utter chaos of the bar scene behind her. Max is in a rare club in that he also designed her signature weapon, Death Dealer, which left with the ace in the hole once she ascended to Living Legend right before Pro Tour Singapore. With her leaves the only representation of her on a hero card, through Max. Gone, living on in some attack and non-attack action cards, but playable only in the LL format. So, did this change every card in the game going forward? Actually, no. There are a few heroes that I think match the quality of storytelling that Max brought with Azalea, but ultimately there are still very formulaic transitions from young to old. Take Marlin, also a ranger, from the gravy forward set High Seas. Sam Yang, who I mentioned earlier, does an excellent job of putting her in two different places, but not two different settings, if that makes sense. He does an excellent job of showing her aging to become more decorated, taking charge, but there is not a unique shift in perspective of the character. We can see that when Marlin transitions into Marlin, Treasure Hunter, she has become what she has always wanted to become. We can see on the face of Azalea, when she transitions to Azalea Ace in the Hole, that she has not become what she thought she might. The face of accomplishment and maybe a little insanity, the face of success through trial and error. This is not to say any hate on Sam Yang. He has made so much good art and deserves all the love. Shouts out to Phi. LSS, please print some help for him. But please, please, please don't think I'm hating, and don't go hating on him because he is truly an incredible presence in the Flesh and Blood community. To argue the other side, here are a few card arts that I think hit the mark pretty well. Let's start with Phi, a strong contender. Shout out to Sam Yang for making the most badass hero art in the game, in my opinion. Maybe the craziest transformation from young to old, Lavaya into Lavaya Shadowborn Abomination. I think, though, what makes Azalea the ultimate transition so far is the subtlety. With Lavaya, we know what happened to her to make her the brutish demon she is now, but with Azalea, there seem to be so many stories that we don't know the answers to. Really sitting and pondering this art can bring so many questions to mind, and I just love that about her. Flesh and Blood, to continue harping on hero-centricity, is different from a game like Magic the Gathering in that where Magic has color combos and archetypes that stem from those, Flesh and Blood's archetypes are pre-built, in a way. You can't surprise at a Pro Tour with Draconic Bravo, Light Kasai, or Elemental Katsu. Once you select your hero, all you get are your class, talent, and generic cards to lead you to a victory. And let me tell you, some of the hottest button topics of Flesh and Blood are class identities.
Runeblade is simply the best class in Flesh and Blood by the third Runeblade obtaining Living Legend. Now we can put that argument to rest of Runeblade obviously being the best class in the game.
The most winningest class in all of Flesh and Blood. And why is that? Certainly, strength plays a large role, in part to the split damage that one would expect from a class called Runeblade, offering non-blockable damage through rune chants and then swinging big with a card like Deathly Wail. There's Sam Yang again. It surely can be tricky to navigate when playing against. But what about the artistic identity of Runeblade? Well, Runeblade was introduced the same time as Azalea was, with Viserai. There are many extremely talented artists that work on this class in Arcane Rising. Daria Klebnikova produced the artwork for Mordred Tide, a haunting image of some lost cemetery, raising death from under the soil. Danielle Jimenez brings us the defining token of the class, the rune chant. But in this first set, and a few more after it, we find the artwork of none other than Max Kostin. Enter Read the Runes. Here we have what I consider to be, while not as widely played, one of the most staple cards of the class. Simply, create 3 rune chants. In some heroes, like the shadowy figures of Chain and Vencet, we use these rune chants as resources. In other heroes, this is a card that is used to stack up damage for a later turn. It's not my favorite of Max's Runeblade cards. That award goes to Condemned to Slaughter, but in Read the Runes, I see a perfect artistic example of the Runeblade class. Here we have an evil figure, feminine in nature for this character, practicing a dark magic that has already taken 2, 3, maybe even 4 steps deep into its evil method. She's nearly nude, connecting through to the earth, close on a few levels, which we will end up seeing mirrored a few sets later with Briar being an Earth Runeblade, and then later with Florian in Rosetta. She has taken the elements of death, in this case a few severed heads, and begun her ritual. She's in a static position, taking action inwardly, which lends to the card not having go again. She is plotting and scheming, setting up for something bigger to come, much like how a card with no keyword go again would set you up for a bigger turn later. Now, whether Max meant any of this or not, that doesn't matter to me, I guess. If he didn't, it kind of shows in a different way how brilliant he is. There's so much about his Runeblade cards that lend themselves so perfectly to class identity. Take Malefic Incantation. This card took Viserai from the dumps back to the top, and it makes sense. It's a powerful card. What I love about the art on this card is that it harkens back to previous Runeblade cards he and others have worked on. There is intention. For example, the circular rune chant right behind the 2 figures. The characters almost fuse together as in Deathly Duet. The regalia, similar in vein to Read the Runes. The slacked jaws of death. The purples and burgundies and muddy grays of other Runeblade cards. The dance macabre of the ritualistic creatures behind the central figures. This card screams class identity. From name to mechanics to art. I won't say Max is the leading Runeblade artist, but if anyone understands how to take inspiration from the mechanics and title and translate those to the art, it's him. Hopefully we get more from him in this regard in the coming years. I would love to see LSS let him flesh out the Runeblade class even more. It's also imperative to note that Max has done work on the newest class in Flesh and Blood, Necromancer, which I think is pretty in line with Runeblade. Here we see 2 new faces, signaling the start of a new class's identity. In a set where there are so many lighthearted, maybe even goofy representations of cards, Max approaches these prompts with a candor, maybe even a bit, of horror. My favorite part of Max's art is obviously his emphasis on the faces of the characters he inks, but just as importantly, the faces he doesn't show tells us so much. Whether they be in the middle of separating their doll to tear a horde of soldiers limb from limb, being sliced with an obsidian fire vein, or they be bargaining for their life, the visage you can't see in Max's art often shows just as much as those that you can. One of my favorite arts in the entire game is Arachne Tarantula, face obscured as it is behind a mask. Liv and her partner produced a great video about the masks in Flesh and Blood on T and TCG with Liv. I'd suggest giving it a watch if you have any interest in the assassin class. I think my favorite card that exhibits this shadowed aspect of his oeuvre was mentioned earlier, Mutiny on the Battalion Bark.
Captain Vengel? Aye, there be a sea dog whose bark be worse than his bite.
says Swiller Saltbeard on the Battalion Bark card, art by Arcoe. And that's exactly what we see on this card, an art of triple entendre. His bark, his ship. His bark, his crew. His bark, his loud mouth that has put him into this situation, backed into a corner, about to be taken to the depths by none other than... Conqueror of the High Seas is the High Seas card, in my opinion. I mean, it's in the name. What I love about this card so much is that even without a single living organism shown in detail, we still get to see the last face this ship and its crew will ever see. The ship of gravy bones. This is what I'm saying going back to class identity. He just gets it. There are so many faces that assemble this ship. Skulls and skulls of large proportion tower over the dainty bark before it. The Conqueror of the High Seas so massive it doesn't even fit into the full frame of the card. Certainly a ship that could conquer any high tide and would maybe even produce a high tide of its own. You know, I think there's a lot more than just the facial elements of Max's art to talk about, but I think you can begin to appreciate those things going forward. To be honest, Max's catalog is a little smaller than I would want it to be. He's been around since the beginning. Welcome to Wraith saw him putting his fingerprint on Fab with one of the most staple cards in the whole game. I mean, how many times have you asked yourself, is this card better than Head Jab? Because that's him. If you've ever asked yourself that question, then I think you should also take into consideration Max as the most important artist in the game too. And I hope that next time you see a card that he did, whether it be in your deck or played against you, I hope you pick it up and just admire it. Because every time an opponent plays a card against me, I can't help but point it out. I just love his art, and I love that he has made such an impact on this game. Also, come on, he made Ravenous Rabble. Like, how much more could you want? Hey everyone, I just want to say a huge thank you for watching if you made it this far. This is my first ever video essay, and I've always wanted to do them, I just never really know what to do them about before I found Flesh and Blood. And a massive shout out to this guy. If you don't know who that is Sam from the channel Ristic Studies. If you don't know, he makes magic videos, and they are much more refined than this one. Even if you don't play it, you should watch them. This video is my favorite. I'm shouting him out because he put out a post basically outlining his process, and it has helped me so much throughout this entire journey. So thank you. Thank you to my teammates. Hopefully we'll put out more content in the future, gameplay and stuff like that. Thanks again, everyone.